I said to you yesterday a couple of things. This is about oil, but it's not. Venezuela is not about us and our oil corporations. What this is about is China and starving China of energy. If you starve China of energy, and especially oil, and we went through all the facts and figures yesterday. If you missed it, just look for it. I think it's trending today on X. Listen to that monologue and you'll understand it. I also said this wasn't about regime change because they left the regime in place. We have more on that. Hopefully I'll be able to get to that later today. Let me clarify because I have a new understanding of things. Now, I want to say up front that this is a theory. I don't have any insider information. I just have this gut that this is probably right. And I may be giving the Trump administration too much credit for this. I will tell you, I don't know who his advisors are. I mean, I know who's around him, but this is some of the most brilliant stuff. If I'm right on this, this is some of the most brilliant things I've ever seen. Because as I said yesterday, you know the old phrase, kill two birds with one stone. He's killed, I said yesterday, like 40 birds. I think we're up to about 1,000 birds that I can find. With one stone, Venezuela, he is knocking all of these birds out. And it is putting us into a position of A, regime change, and B, the great arsenal of democracy. Let me explain. Start with regime change. He's not changing a regime. He's changing the global regime. Who runs the global regime? There's two things. One, China. China, Russia, Iran, they're running what I would call the Axis powers, okay? You have to start thinking, as I told you last year, we're in World War III, you just don't know it yet. We're in a Cold War. Hope to God it never becomes a hot war. But what Donald Trump is building is this arsenal so it doesn't go into a hot war. FDR waited too long. At the pace that Donald Trump is running, it may not be too late. But what is the regime? One, China. There are only three choices of where this all ends, okay? Because everybody's economy is falling apart. The whole system is falling apart. It doesn't work anymore. Okay. One, China, Russia, Iran. Two, the WEF. The WEF is the Great Reset. That is a global government run by oligarchs and businesses and banks. The ones that are doing it, WEF, read my book, The Great Reset, and all of the oligarchs and the banking system, who's the big foe of the United States right now in Europe. It's certainly not, France. It's Christine Lagarde, the central banker of Europe, the European Central Bank. She's the one that is coordinating all of the currencies, everything that's going on to bring them into this fascistic WEF world. Okay. So those are your two choices. Donald Trump has come up with another choice, and that is America First, which is bucking the entire system. It's saying we're not going to go with the WEF. We're not going to be run by corporations and a bunch of faceless people and all these oligarchs. No. And we're not going to be run by the Chinese. And we're not going to go that road. We believe in America and the American system. That's the regime change. He's overthrowing what the Western world was doing, the WEF, the Great Reset. We were all in on that. All that global warming, all of that red tape, he's throwing all of that out. We're not doing any of that. We're going here. I believe Donald Trump has given up on Europe. It's over. They can go their own way. They're going the wrong direction. They're never going to change. It's over. He has written the Far East off as communist China run. And the Middle East, he's negotiating with everybody. He's negotiating in some places where I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like what you're doing. Why are you negotiating with these people at the table? Because he's trying to build the the arsenal of the West. He's taking our foes and trying to make them as much of allies, kind of like what we did with Stalin. Bring them in enough so they don't fall on the other side. Okay? Now, let me tell you how I got here. Marco Rubio said the other day, we're going after the cartels and the oligarchs. And how I heard that was, we're going after the cartels. I'm out. And I didn't even pay attention to the second half of that sentence. I paid attention to the cartels. Okay? If I'm a cartel, and this is the way our American president and the whole global system has always played this. Let's just start. What is a cartel? How does a cartel work? You have a mob boss, if you will, and they are going to sell something that is illegal, be that people or drugs. They're going to do illegal things. So what does the cartel boss need? The cartel boss needs mules to move product, needs enforcers to keep people in line, and they need the workers, the chemist and everybody else, to actually procure and make the product, right? That's where you start. To keep that going, however, as you grow, you also need the cops, the judges, and the politicians. You got to have them in your pocket. Otherwise, they'll shut you down. If you have those things, this is where all presidents and everybody else stops. Where are we doing? We're going into Venezuela. We're going to get the kingpin of the cartel. We're going to go in and we're going to get Maduro. He's the kingpin of the cartel. True. Absolutely true. And we're going to send a message to the other politicians and the judges and the cops and the other cartels. We're watching you. But what happens? Once America stops watching it, it just grows again, right? Over and over again. We've been talking about this system forever. Let me go back to the cartel. What is a cartel? Because there's one part we never, ever talk about. We never talk about it. What is the other thing a cartel must have to be successful? The banks. They must have the banks. Remember, they have the politician. Let's think of this as Epstein. Epstein, in his last couple of years, moved $13 billion. Somebody check on that. $13 billion. He moved it. There were like 70 what are called yellow tickets. Whenever the banks spot money being moved into offshore accounts, et cetera, and they're like, something illegal is going on here, it automatically generates a yellow ticket. Okay? You move $10,000 out of your bank and you do it every Friday, a yellow ticket is going to come up with the bank, and it will go right to the Treasury. And the Treasury then says, officers, go look into this. Something funny's going on. Well, he had like 70 yellow tickets. You can't move that much money into offshore accounts without the bank knowing. The bank did know. The Treasury knew. But for some reason, neither the bank nor the Treasury did anything about those yellow tickets. So is the problem just Epstein? Is the problem, if Epstein were in jail today, he's dead, but let's say he's in jail today and what's-her-face is in jail today, did we get the bad guys? No. We got some of the bad guys, but we didn't get the bad guys that made it all possible. We didn't go after the bank. We didn't go after the Treasury. What the hell happened here? Nobody wants to look into that. Let me tie this back now to the cartels and to we're going after the cartels and the oligarchs. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but I hope this is true. I know this is really a lot of meat to throw on the table. We'll be going through it over the next few days, but I'm telling you, I think this is right. Now, we get into dicey territory here where this is total conjecture when I look at oligarchs. And this is the part I hope is true. So who are the oligarchs? Who are the people that actually run the world? The billionaires. The oligarchy is a system run by the few. Who are the few? The powerful. How do you become powerful? Money. Lots and lots of money. Oligarchs, we always look at Russian oligarchs. They're billionaires, right? Well, the billionaires, they have to have the banks. And many times those billionaires are in league with the banks. And when you look at the WEF, all of those giant corporations, they're being told what to do by the banks. That's the whole Great Reset. The bank will tell you what to do. Okay, so you have the banks. And when I talk bank, I'm talking about the international banks. I'm talking about the central banks. I told you, biggest foe of Trump and freedom is the central bank of Europe. One of the biggest foes for our economy, according to Donald Trump, is the Fed. And the Fed controls everything. They're the banking system. They're the ones that keep getting the bailouts. They're the ones that are moving all of the money for the Somalians. Nobody in the bank wanted to question how millions of dollars were leaving the banks in Minnesota to be transferred over to Somalia. There was no yellow ticket, nothing, really? Because if I were sending millions of dollars over to Somalia, I would imagine my bank would call and go, hey, can I ask you what's going on with you in Somalia? There's nothing? Nothing. Wow, that's really hard to believe. And if that is what happened, their banks had no idea. Well, then we have to really think about our banks. Okay. The Fed is Donald Trump's one of his biggest foes, at least on the economy. Where most likely is the money for the cartels? The cartels' money most likely is in the Cayman Islands. Okay, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands is all secret. But who set that up? That's the London banking system. Who was the head? This is where my head goes, and I'm sorry, this could all just be crazy dots put together. But who used to be the head of the Central Bank of London? Who ran that? I'll give you a hint. He's now the Premier of Canada. He's the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. He was never a politician. He was the head of the Central Bank of London. And then he moves over to Canada and he becomes the Prime Minister of Canada? Hey, I'm not sure if that has anything to do with anything, but I was brought to Carney because something else was said in the last couple of days by Trump and by Marco Rubio. We're going after these drug cartels and all of these evildoers, if you will, in South America. And let's not forget about Canada, because Canada plays a big role in all of this. Okay, who's he talking to in Canada? He also said, this is Trump, Canada, Panama, and Greenland should be protectorates of the United States. I heard that, and I went, that's Trump being Trump. And then I thought, no, wait a minute. That's not Trump being Trump. Because if you think about global regime change, I'm going to tie all of this together, and I'll show you what I think is actually happening and why it is so important and how it will impact your life for years to come.